The beautiful thing about the fact that there's only 5 games this week and that there's only one on Sunday, and that Sunday game actually ended at 3 o'clock my time, that means I can basically do this review without switching the boards, and also I can do this earlier than what I usually would do for my Sunday review. And also, this is one of the few times that I actually decided to open up the window, get some natural light into my room instead of, turning on the lamp. So you notice it's a little bit brighter, and I kind of like this a little bit better with the lamp because, yeah, it at times putting the lamp on and putting on the lights in the ceiling, it kind of makes the lighting a little bit bad. But either way, let's get into these 5 games action, and it's clear that some of these games and some of these teams really miss those guys that is currently on international duty. But that wasn't the case in this game between Dallas and Colorado, because both of these teams didn't really had a lot of players that was on international duty. And in the end, it was Dallas with a 2-1 win against Colorado. So Dallas, of course, bounced back after losing to Columbus last week 1-0. And Dallas actually started 5 homegrown in this game, which would have been a record if it wasn't for RSL later that night. Started 6 homegrowns in their starting 11, and that, of course, is the record for the most homegrown start in an MLS game. But in the first half, Barrios scores unassisted to make it 1-0 for Dallas, and then in the second half, Smith, of course, gets the equalizer for Colorado. And, the first half, there was definitely chances for both teams to potentially score. Colorado will be a little bit disappointed that they didn't really able to take away their chances in the first half and maybe tie the game up. But like I said, they did tie the game in the second half, which is kind of ironic because the second half they didn't have as much chances as they did in the first half. But Smith, of course, ties it up at 1-1, and at this point when I was checking the score, and I actually didn't really watch a lot of this game, I only catch like the last 10 minutes of this game, I thought maybe Colorado can actually get out of Dallas with a point. And I said in the preview of how, I feel like this is a game that Colorado need to win. But if they can get out a point out of this game, then it would be something good to take out of, and certainly something that can help their chances of making the playoffs. Nope, that of course did not happen because Hollinshead, who is a left back for Dallas, scored a goal to give Dallas the lead back in the 82nd minute, and that is your final score in this game. Shots in this game, Dallas has 15 shots compared to 12 that the Rapids has. They had 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that the Rapids had. 6 shots off target compared to 3 that Colorado has. 3 shots that was blocked compared to 5 that Colorado has. And Dallas had 52% possession to 48% possession. So, for Dallas, this is definitely a good win, and it kind of makes it even better the fact that the 5 homegrown starters that they put into this game, and at the end of the day they were able to get the result. I mean, this is pretty much the philosophy of Dallas, a team that is not known to be going into the international market and spend some big money on expensive DP, but instead promoting their homegrown player from their academy. And it seems like it has once again paid off again, and that they are really making me kind of looking really bad by saying that they're kind of like in a rebuilding mode. Because really, for Dallas, they don't really need to rebuild when they actually have an excellent academy, and they're one of those teams that is an example of how to play your kids and how to promote and use the best of your academy and able to put it into the starting 11 and able to get some resort in MLS. And as for Colorado, like I said in the preview, I think Colorado has definitely showed some fight in this road game. I think they have definitely looked much better than they have been in the past on the road. But again, they just cannot get the resort. It's one thing to be good on the road and be much better than you are in the previous season, but at the end of the day, if you don't get the resort, it's kind of the same resort as before, where you're not able to get some points on the road. So for the Rapids, they're going to be very frustrated about this resort, but for Dallas, it's another good win, and something tells me this team is going to make the playoffs. I mean, I really regret the fact that I decided to put Dallas in 8th place and just missing the playoffs in my prediction. Next up, and probably the most surprising result so far this season, and probably the biggest upset so far this season, is Orlando City going to the RedBulls, and a team that after just getting absolutely destroyed by Montreal 3-1 at home, they go on the road, which is a place that they haven't done well at all and haven't got a win in almost a year, but they finally got a win for the first time since last April with a 1-0 win. And guess who decided to score the winning goal for Orlando City? Yep, that's right. It's Sacha Kljestan, former New York Red Bulls player, scores from Matinho and Dwyer, and that is your only goal here in this game. And I understand that the Red Bulls are missing a lot of players in this game. They're basically missing their entire back line, and they had to put one of their winger to play in the left back row because their left back row, not only their starter isn't really available for this game, but also their other backups player and the player that is going to come in case the starting left back is not there is also out for this game. So they had to pretty much put one of their wingers to their left back, which in this case it was Alex Mule playing in the left back row, which is definitely not a great idea, but that's all that the Red Bulls had to do. And I know they were very depleted in this game, but let's be honest, losing to Orlando City and you're playing at home at Red Bull Arena, that's still very embarrassing. I mean, I don't care if you're depleted or not. Orlando City, as I said, they haven't won in over a year, and they're definitely very low confident coming into this game, and yet somehow they're able to walk out of Red Bull Arena with all 3 points. Shots in this game, the Red Bulls had 9 shots compared to 6 that Orlando City has, 4 shots on goal compared to 2 that Orlando City has, 2 shots off target compared to none that Orlando City has, and 3 block shot compared to 4 that Orlando City has. The Red Bulls had 55% possession compared to 45% possession that Orlando City has. And despite the fact that Orlando City did 1-1-0, it wasn't really a game where Orlando City got a lucky goal. I mean, Sacha Kljestan got a lucky goal, and that they were able to put away their only chance of the game. They actually had some decent chances in this game, and probably they could have maybe make it 2-0 and 3-0. Now, having said that, the Red Bulls, that goes the same with them. They had some chances of their own, but really the bottom line of this game is that Orlando City, not only this is probably the best defensive kind of display that they have played in a very long time, but they're able to walk out Red Bull Arena with all 3 points, which is something that not a lot of teams have done. And as for the Red Bulls, like I said, it's a very embarrassing result, but at the same time, I think once they get some of their starters and some of those guys that they have been out because of either injuries or international duty, I think this team would look much better than what the Red Bulls team did in this game. But next up, another surprising result, although I think this one is not as surprising as the Red Bulls Orlando City one, and that of course is the Union getting their first win of the season after beating Columbus 3-0 at home. And I say the fact that it's kind of a surprising result and kind of not is because I didn't expect the Union to just completely light up Columbus, but at the same time, Columbus, they're missing their best shot stopper in Zach Steffen, they're missing their most important key midfielder, that is Will Trapp, and also they're missing their only reliable goal scorer, that is Jerzy Zardes. So that Columbus is they're not only going to struggle going forward to score goals, but their back line and their midfield could be in for a bit of a trouble, and it was the case in this game. The Union really kind of won that battle in terms of the midfield and in terms of the defensive area. And also in this game, this was the David Accam show. And I don't know if I remember the last time I mentioned David Accam having a big impact in a game, because it's been so long. Ever since he come to the Union, he has looked nothing like the player that he was with the Chicago Fire. And this performance by Akam not only was just an incredible performance by him, but it was also a very emotional performance by him. I just heard that earlier this week he, of course, has heard news that his father, of course, just passed away, and that Philadelphia actually asked him that, you don't necessarily have to play this game. You could just go back to Ghana to basically attend your father's funeral, but instead he said that, nah, I want to stay here because this is the only place that makes me happy. So, yeah, usually when we see athletes that have lost a loved ones and stuff like that, obviously they're going to be very devastated about that loss, but it feels like they always tends to have that extra motivation. It seemed like they just have that extra hunger that, I'm going to do this for my family. And it seemed like David Accam clearly did it in this game, and he of course started the goal scoring in the first half in the 31st minute after he scores from Peacock and Madunian. And the celebration that he did, not only he basically went down to his knees and kind of like just did kind of like a messy kind of celebration, just kind of pointing the finger into the heavens, but he also was just kind of sobbing on the field. I mean, that, I've seen a lot of kind of emotional kind of celebration, but when you see that kind of celebration, it really kind of is very touching, and certainly you can see how much that really meant to him, and not just meant the fact that he finally broke his duck of scoring. The first goal ever since July of last year against his former team, the Chicago Fire, but also the fact that that goal was for his father that just passed away earlier this week. And then he would, of course, get on the score sheet again in the 41st minute to make it 2-0 in favor of the Union. And then in the second half, Ezenio scores from none other than David Accam. I mean, Accam with a goal, well, actually not a goal, but 2 goals and assists in this game, and I think that he's definitely going to be the player of this week. I mean, when I look at the other games so far and some of the players' performance, I think this performance by Accam was by far better than any other players that has performed throughout this week, and there's no doubt he's going to win the player of the week, which, we're going to find out if that is going to be the case. I'll be actually surprised if he doesn't win player of the week, consider he basically contribute all the goals that the Union has scored, and, for the Union, this is definitely something that their fans really want them to see, and I think besides Accam with the good performance, I think Jim Curtin, not only he's going to be happy with this performance, but he probably is taking a big sigh of relief. The fact that, yeah, if they do not win this game, he is definitely going to hear it from the fans again, and maybe with this performance, it might have cooled the temperature in terms of the hot seat that he is sitting. But in terms of the shots in this game, the Union had 9 shots compared to 5 that Columbus had. 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that Columbus has. 3 shots off target compared to 2 that Columbus had. 1 shot that was blocked compared to 2 that Columbus has. And Philly has 45% possession compared to 60 or 55% possession that the Crew has. So, for the Columbus Crew, this is a kind of the disappointing result on the road, but at the same time, like what I said with the RedBulls, they were missing a lot of their key starters, and I think once those key starters gets back, then this team should look as good as they were in the first 3 games of the season. And for the Union, hopefully this is going to be a result that really kind of drive them and start get some points on the board. And also for David Accam, I know he was extremely motivated in this game. He needs to show that he can do this throughout the season. I mean, it's good that he can do it in this game with kind of like the emotional attachment that he has coming into this one, but he needs to make sure that he does that every game. And I'm pretty sure the Union wants him to do that every game, because the way that he performs in this game shows that $1 million that the Union basically signed for him a couple of years ago is definitely paying off. But next up, LAFC. So all this talk about the fact that they get revenge and all this talk about how they're gonna destroy RSL. Well, one part did come true, which is they did get revenge against RSL. And, I don't really see this as kind of a revenge. I mean, if you're going to get revenge against a team that knocked you out of the playoffs, then the best way to do it is just knock them out the next time when you face each other in the playoffs. That is really the true revenge. This game, however, I knew coming into this game RSL wasn't going to win this because they're just so depleted and just their entire squad has just been taken out because of international duty injuries and also suspension. And as I mentioned before, they started 6 homegrown in this game, and you got to give a lot of credit to RSL. Even them not able to get this game, they really put a hell of a fight against LAFC. In the first half, Krylak scores on the penalty to give RSL a surprising 1-0 lead. I mean, DeMar Krylak, he is probably one of the most hated player if you're an LAFC fan, because this guy just seems to love to score against LAFC. He's almost like the LAFC killer in many ways. But Rossi then get the equalizer for LAFC 5 minutes later, and we head to halftime 1-1. And then in the second half, the announcer was talking about how, well, eventually we are going to really turn it up, and this is going to be a show for LAFC. No, it wasn't really a show. In fact, it was more frustration for LAFC where, they dominated throughout this game, and I understand that RSL was kind of parking the bus and kind of nursing throughout the game, but they just cannot break down this RSL defense. And, RSL did actually score a goal in the second half about 5 minutes into this game with Salcedo scoring the goal, but it was actually ruled offside. And this is where I have to talk about this situation compared to what happened last week, where remember how last week it was, I believe, Hamilton that of course was in a clear offside position in that game against TFC and New England, and how I thought that was a good call, the fact that he wasn't offside because the player intentionally plays the ball on the pass, and that unfortunately that player was trying to intercept it. The ball basically deflected right into Hamilton's path, which was in an offside position. Well, in this case, I know RSL fan will say, well, it should be the same case in this situation with I believe, I forgot who exactly it was that. Oh, Atuesta. Yeah, Atuesta basically slide tackle DeMar Krylak there, and then the ball somehow ricochet right into Salcedo's path, and then of course he puts it away, but Salcedo was in an offside position, and RSL fan would say, well, Atuesta, he was intentionally playing the ball. Why shouldn't this be called? Why should this be called offside when the play last week was not called offside? I think the reason why this wasn't called offside was because I know Atuesta did intentionally play the ball, but it was kind of on a sliding challenge. Last week, it was basically because the ball was passed, and then one of the New England player basically tried to intercept it, and then unfortunately it was very unlucky of him basically try to play the ball, and then it just somehow ricochet right to Hamilton, who was in an offside position. But in this case, it wasn't really that. It was just Atuesta trying to win the ball, and the ball of course went into Salcedo, who was in an offside position. And I think maybe in some way this is where the rules needs to be more clarified. There needs to be more clarification about how when a defender plays the ball intentionally and somehow the ball does ricochet into a player that was in an offside position, whether or not if this is going to call offside or not. I mean, for me, I still think that I still kind of in some way confused with what exactly it really means when a defender intentionally plays the ball and that the player behind him is no longer offside. Is it in this situation, or is it the situation what we had last week in that New England versus Toronto game? But I can understand why RSL fans are angry, the fact that that goal should have counted, and if that goal would have counted. That would have really kind of changed the way how this game would have gone. Because in the 92nd minute, and before we get into that goal that LAFC scored in the 92nd minute, in the 84th minute, Portillo got sent off after he just came on a couple of minutes ago. And again, I don't think this was another one of those controversial call, and I don't know if I should agree with the fact that this should have been a red card or not, because on one hand, an argument for the fact that this was a red card is because, Patilli, he got hands to the face of Diego Rossi, and whenever you try to do that, that is gonna be a red card most of the time. But at the same time, it looked like Rossi kind of made a bit of a meal out of it and kind of sold it a little bit to make it a little bit more dramatic than it should have been, and maybe that shouldn't have been a red card. So, it's another very debatable kind of one, and I don't know if this red card really kind of affect this game. I mean, I know throughout the time, a lot of people talk about how whenever a player gets sent off, that can really affect the outcome of this game. But I think throughout this game, RSL was just parking the bus. They were trying to nurse their way, and hopefully they don't get absolutely destroyed. And even in this case, before the red card, they were just hoping they can hold on to this one lead. There was no intention for them to potentially maybe try to be a little bit risky and go for it to get that second goal. They were trying to nurse their way with a depleted squad and get a point out of Bank of California Stadium. But unfortunately, that didn't happen because Zimmerman scores from Hemelin. Again, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but, Walker Zimmerman, I know some people will say that shot wasn't deflected and that it was actually a lovely kind of strike, maybe one that could potentially win goal of the week, but when you look on the replay, yeah, it did get deflected off of one RSL player. It's very hard to see in real time, but if you slow it down, it's clear that it just took a bit of a slight deflection, and that's why the ball kind of went the way it is, and I think Ronaldo just kind of completely misjudged that one, and he didn't even actually make a save. He just literally watched that to go into the back of the net. And yeah, LAFC, of course, winning this one 2-1. Shots in this game, LAFC at 19 shots compared to 3 that RSL has. 7 shots compared to 1 that RSL has in terms of shots on goal. Shots off target, 5 that LAFC had compared to 1 that RSL has. Block shots, 7 compared to 1 that RSL has. And possession-wise, 68% possession compared to 32% possession that RSL has. So the stats really tells you the fact that LAFC was just dominating throughout this game, and RSL was just really, they were trying their best to hold on to this result to get a point out of it. But I think at the end of the day, if you're an RSL fan, you got to be proud with the performance. And I know Mike Pecky even said that he was very proud of the way the team played. And it is, because you basically start a squad that is full of homegrown players that is not necessarily ready yet, and yet they almost were able to get out of this game. And in a game where many people thought that they were going to get absolutely destroyed, it didn't really happen. They really hold their ground for pretty much their entire game, except for the last couple of minutes in this game. But finally, we get into the only Sunday game, which is New England. They lost 2-0 to FC Cincinnati. And how about FC Cincinnati? After last week, they got their first ever win in MLS. Now they go on the road where they are also depleted and that they don't have their best kind of players in this team. And I think for FC Cincinnati, if they don't get a result in this game, they can basically relate it to what the RedBulls and Columbus are kind of dealing with, which is when you don't have your best player because of guys that isn't on international duty, yeah, you are probably not going to get a good result. But that wasn't the case for FC Cincinnati. And they think that, yeah, we don't have some of our best players. It's okay. We'll probably get a couple of guys that are not on international duty, and they, of course, will step up. And that is exactly what happened. And the guy that really stepped up in this game was Kenny Saif. And I know that Kenny Saif, recently he says that he doesn't really plan to stay at FC Cincinnati for a long time and that he might go back to Europe. by the end of June because he's only on a 6-month loan with FC Cincinnati. But I can guarantee that after this game, FC Cincinnati is doing everything to try to please Saev and maybe even reward him with a DP contract so that he can stay for this team, because the impact that he made in this game was it was immense. But in the first half, Kakuta Mane scores from Saev to make it 1-0 for FC Cincinnati. And then in the second half, Saev would also score from Mane and Ledesma. And, besides Saev, Kakuta Mane, another guy that I also want to give a shout out in terms of guys that really stepped up in this game. And that, of course, is your final whistle and the result of this game, with FC Cincinnati getting their first row win now and getting their second straight win in MLS. And I feel like FC Cincinnati, for the last 3 weeks, they have really made history in their club. I mean, 3 weeks ago against Atlanta, they got their first point. Last week they got their first ever win in MLS, and then this week they got their first ever row win in MLS. Shots in this game, New England had 17 shots compared to 12 that FC Cincinnati has. Shots on goal, this is probably the most important stats. 2 shots on goal compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has. Shots off target, New England had 7 compared to 8 that FC Cincinnati has. 8 shots that was blocked for New England compared to none that FC Cincinnati has. And the possession-wise, 53% possession for New England compared to 47% possession. And the reason why I highlight the shots on goal kind of thing that really determined this game was because despite the fact that New England had a ton of shots in this game, most of their shots wasn't even close of actually getting into the back of the net. And the 2 shots on goal was actually that double save that that Cincinnati goalkeeper, I believe Richie, that's his name, was able to make. And speaking of New England, yeah, this is bad. This is a very troubling kind of resort, because you're facing against an FC Cincinnati team that is completely depleted, and you're playing them at home, and you still lose 2-0, and now you still have not scored a goal at home. And yeah, I really feel bad for Revs fan. I mean, in one way I can say welcome to the club of being kind of depressed and kind of sad whenever you go to an MLS game. I mean, now you know how a Quakes fans kind of feels like. Although New England fans will basically kind of counter argue and say, at least us Quakes fans were able to see a goal that our team scored in MLS. We haven't actually even seen our team score a goal at home. But yeah, for New England, yeah, this is just really, really bad. And I don't know what to say. Like, the attack, besides Carlos Hill, who, he didn't really have the best of the game in this one, wasn't really doing that much. The midfield, was pretty pedestrian. And then the defense, yeah, it looked really, really bad. And something tells me New England is going to be in for a very, very long year. But either way, that is pretty much it for all the matches that happen in this international break and all those 5 games that has happened. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these results? Next week, of course, we're going to once again back to the 12 games slot, and we're actually going to be having 1 game on Friday, so I'm going to have to do the preview on Thursday. I've been doing previews on Fridays, but I'm going to have to do it on Thursday next week because there's a game on Friday, and doing a preview before a game is about to start is never a good idea. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.